I have a confession to make. I am not the type of filmmaker who likes your traditional sword and sandals movies. Sure, I can appreciate the artistry of Ben-Hur or the Ten Commandments, but it doesn't really mean I like being swept away in the world. Even movies that everyone else loved, like Gladiator, I could just never get into. So while I adore the work of Christopher Nolan, like any self-respecting cinephile does, I was worried that no matter how good the movie is, it just would be lost on me because I don't feel any connection to the story. Even the thought of the Odyssey as a text was worrying to me because obviously the stories of the Iliad have been with me in various forms for my entire life and the better part of 3,000 years before that. It's a well-worn text, yet never a true tentpole event movie like it is today. It has been a while since I have been this excited for a movie to drop in theaters, and in tandem to that, it's also been a while since I've been this worried that I'm going to see something I don't enjoy to this degree. So where did this epic journey take us? I'm Cory, and this is my filmmaker perspective. So the technological achievement of this film is incredible, and I feel like we see this with Nolan more than any other contemporary filmmaker, where he sets a higher bar for himself from project to project and clears it every time. In the interest of full disclosure, I saw the movie in 35mm at this time, so I could talk about it with y'all. I know not everyone has premium large format screens near them, let alone IMAX, and let alone 70mm IMAX. I wanted someone who watches this in a small town at a local independent theater to know that I saw what they saw. And for many people who just want to see the movie at all, you might be better off just snagging a regular ticket just to see it, since the demand for the IMAX screens are just so intense right now. My hope is to go to the TCL Chinese Theater in a few weeks and see it again to appreciate the grandeur and the ideal format. But there are only 41 IMAX 70mm theaters in the world. So the thing is, most people who see this movie are going to see it outside of the intended format. I think the 35mm was still beautiful. So no matter where in the spectrum you see it, I think you will be fine. If you have access to a bigger screen, do it. I think it would be worth it. The most important part is seeing the movie. While I'm talking about 70mm IMAX, this film is the first entirely shot on IMAX cameras, which is a huge to-do because traditionally IMAX cameras are as loud as lawnmowers, they weigh significantly more than a normal cinema camera, and the max clip length is 3 minutes. So to even consider using them usually requires a very specific need, and it had to be worth it because the IMAX cameras are so outrageously expensive to rent. There were all kinds of things that needed to be considered. For example, the case to quiet the camera is so large that actors couldn't see each other the way they normally could. So mirror systems were used to keep the eye line correct with your co-star so that you could play off the other person. All of these things make the process take longer, cost more, and require more post-production time to get right. This isn't ego or needing the best just because. Nolan, Hoytema, all the crew, all the producers, all the actors, they were pushing us forward as filmmakers. For the sheer capability of man, this is a breathtaking accomplishment. It is beautiful. The sound is incredible. The limitations in clip length keep the edit snappy. The costumes, the production design, the practical and visual effects teams. Would be hard for you to think of a job on set that doesn't have one of the finest individual performances found in the final product. Take a lesser glamorized position, for example. The locations team found the most beautiful places to shoot, and they all worked for the story. They all felt like they had been untouched for 3,000 years. If you are aspiring in locations, there is something to learn here, and that is true for any job you can aspire to. To that point, if you are an aspiring filmmaker, and I know there are a lot of you out there, there has never been so much information out there about every single aspect of this film. The press tour in its own right has been far-reaching, with Nolan and the cast for sure, but there are plenty of articles, podcasts, interviews, etc. with crew members, experts in the technical aspects of film. Anyone who wants to do this, despite your personal affinity for Nolan or the movie, it can be a tremendous learning experience because so much ingenuity had to go into making this movie. Needless to say, this film is going to mop up on Oscar nominations, and if it breaks a record for nominations, it is hard to say from this far out, but it feels like, with a high degree of certainty, it will lead in total nominations. I feel confident saying that it would take an all-time great effort to knock Ludwig Göransson out of the number one spot for score. Anytime you are fashioning 3,000-year-old instrument designs to use in your score, that's enough ingenuity to win that. The cast is filled with Nolan favorites, and the name power he assembles is impressive. I was a little bit worried about it going in because sometimes when you have more than 5 big stars in a movie, it's hard to give everyone enough to do to make the performances memorable. If this cast and movie were being directed by less capable hands, I would worry about the actors never getting lost in the character because the recognition of the star outweighs what they're bringing individually. I worry about the audience watching the movie and saying, oh hey, Robert Pattinson is back, instead of, what is Antinous up to? Of course, I worry for nothing because I actually appreciated the excess of recognizable faces because it allows you to track the characters easier. There are so many characters and connections between them. A star actor can bridge an understanding better than any expository details you can cook up. That, oh, Robert Pattinson is here feeling only really enters the audience's mind when the acting isn't working, or the directing, or the script. Something isn't working, and now you are looking for people you recognize. That is not a problem in this movie because it is clear that every actor is prepared and working at the peak of their powers. Matt Damon as Odysseus was fantastic, and I really appreciate the lengths he went to make this movie what it was, because it wouldn't work unless he was willing to completely dedicate himself to this role. I think just the choice of Damon, though, had unintended consequences downstream that made the movie more digestible and in turn more enjoyable. Saw various people imagining other Nolan star in the place of Damon, such as Cillian Murphy or Christian Bale, but I think the hypothetical alone changes a lot. Damon garners a natural sympathy that the others don't. And not for nothing, I think that element of his acting is what makes him the frontrunner for Best Actor this year. While on the subject of people I'm ready to give awards to, John Leguizamo is playing all the right notes in this performance, and I'm glad that he is getting this opportunity because he is way underappreciated in my mind. Something about him being so funny, I think, has always robbed him a bit of that deserved appreciation, when the real ones know that comedy is so much more difficult than the drama. Caveat that we are so far out from awards and there are so many contenders for Best Supporting Actor, but he's my pick right now. I'm just so happy for him. One additional actor who really brought in this was Himesh Patel. He played off Damon well, and he had a great sense for what he needed to be for this movie. He was like a metronome, because I feel like he guided the tempo a lot in the scenes, which is tough because he was rarely the most important character in those scenes. All throughout, though, nearly every actor looked like they were going for it, trying to give the very best performance they were capable of. Sad to report, I feel like Tom Holland is the only performance that feels like friction. And it's a shame because I really enjoy Tom and was looking forward to him in this, but something about this just reads off for me. The problem is that everyone up and down the cast is so locked in the story exactly the way they need to be, and Tom is the only one who feels like he's in a different movie. I wasn't saying it's a bad performance by any means, but when you have so many people at the top of their games, anything short of that will tend to stick out. So to the sword and sandal movie of it all, does this film stand above as one of the best of the genre? Unequivocally, I think so. At the very least, will it be remembered for its scope and the effort that was put into making what it was. I don't imagine that will start a swell of new movies in a similar vein because even though it has been a long and storied history in film, much like Westerns, these movies can be epics, but they have to be special to truly connect. And I don't think the audience is there to connect with a mediocre version of a Western or a sandal. The genre at this stage is not ripe for inspiration. In terms of winning awards, I think The Odyssey has a real shot at being one of the most nominated Oscar movies ever. And with the number of technical awards it already feels destined for, I think most wins are in the conversation as well. I think if on nomination day you see Odyssey and all the acting awards, it will be a sign of frontrunner status across the board. Sinners at 16 was a sweep of the technicals and 3 actings, but it also had Best Song, where I doubt we see that for the Odyssey. So to play for 16, you would need Damon, Hathaway in lead, Leguizamo in supporting, but the supporting actress spot is tough. If Hathaway is there, you lose a spot for lead actress. And there is an argument for Zendaya and Charlize Theron, though I think while they were good, they did have a little too little to do. The best chance is probably Samantha Moore as Cersei, because while it was limited screen time, it was a really good performance that stood out. And they managed to get 4 acting and best song and finish with 17. I think you can start writing down the winners in pen that morning. One thing I thought about walking in was some article or something I had seen in passing about how some AI studio had made a version of the Odyssey entirely in AI. And I'm not going to speak to that because I can't imagine why I would watch that output to begin with. But I had a moment where I really hoped Christopher Nolan's Odyssey would be incredible. Let me expand. I have been looking forward to it since I first heard of it. I assumed it would be excellent. And in the last week, I started worrying a little bit. Not that it wouldn't be good or anything like that, just that the hype had gotten a little too hot. It started feeling like this would need to be one of the finest films of the decade to clear that bar. It started to feel like the outcome of the opening weekend for the movie was going to say something about where cinema as an art form is. While I didn't think it would bomb, I felt like $1 under projections and the outlook in Hollywood would suddenly get cloudy. Like I had said with Nolan setting bars and clearing them, this bar just felt really high. Like I said, I really don't like these movies. It just has so little room for error before my eyes glaze over. But guess what? Chris cleared it. He did it again. He had room to spare. It is such a victory for human filmmakers who can work harder, have void shortcuts, and do the things on the margins that can only happen organically in the height of creativity. To make this movie was going to require a humongous budget, which it did. But Nolan really reached for things that made the film the best it can be. And they all paid dividends in the end. 2,000 extras, the Trojan horse, the Cyclops, the pigs, everything. It all worked. The Cyclops could have easily been entirely CGI. Clearly, it could be AI too. But we got a 20-foot tall puppet, essentially, with the finishing touches done by VFX artists who were given the time to do it right. That whole sequence is incredible, and it's because they put in the time and effort to get it right. You have people trying to find it in certain theaters because of the format. People don't ask this about movies they don't care about. No one asked what IMAX format Supergirl was on. Nothing to worry about. I swear that it's nothing hidden inside this except for the leaderboard. I want to play fast and loose with whether I like this movie or not, but unfortunately it was just too good for me to fool anyone. I'm serious about Sword and Sandals. I really don't like them at all, and yet I love this film. I said something similar with war movies in 1917, but if it's just the right movie, it can be hard to tell that I don't care for the genre. If I had to give the Odyssey a rating, I would give it a 9.1. Good enough for third on the leaderboard behind Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and the aforementioned 1917. I know the memes and TikToks are already starting in full force, so I think this movie will have some real cultural resonance. I already broke down the Oscar nominations where I imagine it will do really well. I'm just so happy that I got to see it in 35 first, because it still gives me something else to look forward to, and I can promise you from personal experience, seeing it is the most important thing, especially if you want to make films yourself one day. Thank you so much for joining me here today for this Filmmaker Perspective. I think the chances are pretty high we'll have something different for you next week, so keep your eyes glued for that. In the meantime, have a great week, everybody. I'll see you again real soon.